What if there were something so valuable, so life changing, that once you truly saw it, you would gladly give up everything else because nothing else compares? That's exactly what Jesus is talking about in his parable, The Pearl of Great Value. This parable talks about the third stage of perception, where a person moves from recognizing value, which the parable of the hidden treasure focused on, to discerning ultimate value. Hi, I'm Lisa. Welcome back to Biblical Reality Check. The parable can be found in Matthew 13, verses 45 to 46, and reads as follows. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away and sold everything he had and bought it. Like the parable of the hidden treasure, there are four movements in the pearl of great value. Number one, a merchant is searching. Number two, many pearls are evaluated. Number three, one pearl is recognized. And number four, everything is sold to obtain it. The merchant doesn't stumble upon the treasured pearl by accident. He's searching for it because he already knows pearls, understands value, and has trained his perception to recognize a valuable one. And this connects directly to something psychology tells us about value. We don't recognize it randomly. We recognize what we've trained ourselves to value. In cognitive science, this is tied to something called selective attention. Your brain filters reality based on what it believes is important. With this in mind, let's walk through the four movements of the parable. Movement one, a merchant is searching. Unlike the man who stumbled onto the hidden treasure in our previous parable, the merchant is actively seeking value. This is a shift from non conscious growth to conscious seeking, and from accidental recognition to intentional discernment. Movement two, many pearls are evaluated. Discernment requires comparison. The merchant examines many pearls. He evaluates, tests, and weighs. This is the stage where a person learns to distinguish distraction from meaning and noise from truth. Movement three, one pearl is recognized. Ultimate value is unmistakable. The merchant sees one pearl and instantly knows this is the one, not because it's shiny or impressive, but because it resonates with the deepest truth in him. The kingdom is this shift in perception where he finally sees what is genuinely valuable, not valuable in the egoic sense, but valuable because it is true, aligned, and non negotiable at the deepest level of his being. This is the merchant's moment of recognition. Movement four, everything is sold to obtain it. When the merchant sees the pearl, he doesn't need to debate. He simply knows it's the one, and he sells everything to obtain it. This is the psychological core of the parable. When you see clearly, sacrifice stops feeling like sacrifice. Letting go becomes obvious, and the cost becomes irrelevant because the value is absolute. The merchant sells everything, not out of sacrifice, but out of clarity. When you see ultimate value, everything else falls into place. Now let's look at how these four movements actually work by looking at a man I'll call Marcus. Number one, a merchant is searching. Marcus had always believed that life was about finding something worth pursuing, something that would make everything feel meaningful. So, from an early age, he became a searcher. After college, Marcus threw himself into building what he thought a good life should look like. He chased career success, moving into a competitive finance job. He explored new cities, took up hobbies, and constantly pushed himself toward the next opportunity. To Marcus, Life was a series of possibilities, and he was determined to find the one that truly mattered. Number two, many pearls are evaluated. Over time, Marcus collected achievements that seemed valuable at first: promotions and raises, a stylish apartment in New York City, travel experiences, exciting memories, and a wide circle of friends and connections. Each of these felt like a win when he first gained it, but the feeling never lasted. After each milestone, Marcus found himself asking quiet questions he couldn't ignore, like, is this it? And why doesn't this feel like enough? He began to realize that while all these things had value, none of them gave him the deep, lasting sense of fulfillment he was looking for. Number three, one pearl is recognized. Everything started to shift during a conversation with an old friend Marcus hadn't seen in a while, someone who had become a life coach after overcoming addiction. They weren't talking about success or status, but about clarity, purpose, and living intentionally. The friend spoke to Marcus about defining what truly mattered, not what looked impressive from the outside, but what actually made life feel whole. That idea stayed with Marcus. Over the next few months, he began to rethink everything, paying particular attention to when he felt most alive versus when he was just going through the motions. Eventually, it became clear what he valued most wasn't wealth or recognition. It was a sense of purpose, meaningful work, and deep, authentic relationships. For the first time, Marcus felt like he had identified one thing of real, lasting value, something that wasn't temporary or shallow, but foundational. Number four, everything sold to obtain it. Recognizing it was one thing, choosing it was another. Marcus knew that if he wanted this kind of life, he couldn't just add it on top of everything else. He had to make changes. So he stepped away from his high paying but draining job. He simplified his lifestyle instead of constantly upgrading it. And he became more intentional about how he spent his time and who he spent it with. To some people, it looked like Marcus was giving things up: status, money, and ambition. But to Marcus, it felt like the opposite. He had finally stopped chasing everything and started building around what truly mattered. And in so doing, he gained something far more valuable than anything he had found before: a life that actually felt whole. Before the pearl, the merchant's life is scattered across many lesser valuables. After the pearl, his life becomes singular, coherent, and integrated. Like Marcus, the merchant's action is not impulsive. It is the natural behavior of a person whose perception has shifted. And here's where it connects on a deeper level. The kingdom confronts our illusions. Psychology teaches that humans often operate under false narratives, beliefs about identity, success, and happiness that aren't actually true. We chase status, we chase comfort, we chase control, but they don't satisfy. Why? Because they're not ultimate value. But if the value becomes that clear, why doesn't everyone make the same exchange? There are many reasons, but probably three of the most common are these. Number one, we misjudge value. People overvalue what is temporary and undervalue what is eternal. Number two, we fear loss. The brain is wired with something called loss aversion. We fear losing what we have more than we desire something better. Number three, we lack vision. If you don't truly see the pearl, then you'll never make the trade. So, here's what this parable ultimately confronts us with: not whether the pearl exists, but whether you can recognize it when you see it. Because once you do, The question isn't if you'll give things up, it's why you would hold on to anything less. The merchant didn't lose everything. He made the only exchange that actually made sense. And that's the tension this parable leaves us with. Most people spend their lives collecting pearls, careers, achievement, status, comfort, never realizing they're accumulating things that can't satisfy them. However, a few people do see clearly, and when they do, their life stops being scattered across competing values and becomes ordered around one thing that is true. That's the kingdom, not just something you find, but something that reorders everything. So the real question isn't just what is valuable, it's what have you decided is worth everything? Because whatever that is, that's the thing worth shaping your life around. Thanks for watching.